I'm calling this the everything bull market, and there's yet another warning to the everything bull market. We're seeing extremes, the extreme bulls that are looking for blow-off tops, and we're seeing the extreme bears who continue to circulate the bearish news tell us that either extreme is about to happen in 2024. This is why I think the majority are fooled again. Could I be fooled? Yes, of course. I'm trying to bring you a balanced view here. And I think this particular video may trigger some, as I'm going to bring up a few different accounts and expose how this happens. So stick around, hit the like and subscribe button. It is for educational purposes. It's what I find extremely interesting about market psychology and how we can all bring particular data points, get the same data, but represented in a completely different way. This is something that I wanted to know when I first started out, and along my journey, I'm learning more and more as we go. So as you can see already, this is going to be a look at the markets. We are hitting new all-time highs, and so many are still in disbelief. And this is how I think they are thinking, which is why I think there are a lot that are going to be extremely fooled. We just had a new price alert come up at the bottom here as I've started filming this. This is for the Aussie market. Anyway, like and subscribe. This is your home of macro cycle analysis, studying the past to forecast the future. We're doing crypto, Bitcoin, commodities, stock markets around the globe, and of course, the real estate cycle. Now, I've also got some announcements for you, and we're going to look at just a couple of comments because as I see the markets progress, and like you can see, the alerts coming up, these prices are hitting higher and higher prices in the face of everything going on. And yes, we had CPI data announcement, and we're going to have interest rate announcements and all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, we follow the cycle, and the cycle is telling us which direction the market is going and approximately at what sort of timing. Now, I ask that you do hit the like button, subscribe, and if you want to help out your fellow viewers, share the content around. Maybe share it across your Discord groups, your Telegram groups, whatever groups you're in, friends and family, because this comment comes up a lot. Now, I'm not trying to claim that for myself. The information that I've studied that I'm sharing with you guys comes a lot from macro cycles. And so if you can learn how to do that, then you basically hold the keys to your own destiny, your keys to your own future. So they say here, I wish I'd found your channel during the last bull market. Your frequent updates are incredibly informative. And it happens so often all the time that people just wish they had seen this content sooner. So I'm not trying to claim it for myself. It is the macro cycle, and I'm just trying to be another speaker for that and share it with you guys. We do cover a lot to do with timeframes, and I know that is pretty rare as well with a lot of other channels. They sort of go for price targets, but we're focused a lot on the time. Now, the other quick announcement is Michael's channel, my brother. We do TIA crypto together. He's off here for the last 7 days. He will be back. His wife is due to have a baby very soon. It was due last week, and it's been a week overdue. So he will be back. He's just taking some time off with the baby. Go and subscribe to his channel. Links are in the video description. All right, guys, now we can get into it. There's a lot of warnings and new all-time high prices, and I want to share with you my thoughts, and I don't want to bring in hate to different people. It's the ideas. Let's just focus on that. So quickly looking at unpopular opinions in December 2022. This is when I posted this. So we're nearly exactly 1 year ago. S&P is bottoming. There we go. Real estate is not crashing. There we go. We've seen it continue up in Australia and the US. And I did look at some data for the UK recently. We've started to see that climb out as well because they were going up a lot longer than the rest of us. They had a peak later than the US and Australia back in 2022. The second half of 2022 and the first half of 2023 are buying opportunities. I hope we can all see that now. Bitcoin is bottoming. This was December 2022. Remember, we had the bottom just 4 weeks earlier on the 21st of November. And most cryptos are terrible DCA investments. And that was a year ago when they were continuing down. Most of them, not all of them. And there are going to be fantastic opportunities to get into cryptos. That's what I'll show you at the end of this video if I don't talk for too long. So this is the big one that we've been covering, looking at the S&P and reasons why Bitcoin will head into a new all-time high price. It'll take cryptocurrencies along with it with massive gains. The first thing I want to see, though, is a new all-time high price for the S&P index. We've seen it in previous bull markets. You can see during the accumulation period, this is the period where Bitcoin trades underneath its all-time high. And typically, that's about 22 to 3 or 4 months. So basically your 2-year period, that's the accumulation. And within that, the S&P hits a new all-time high. So it gets one in the bear market and retraces from that point, goes on a bit of a decline, and then attempts the new all-time high again. We saw that in 2015, 16, 17, and this particular exact measuring point is when Bitcoin touches a new all-time high price. That's where I've got this first reading for the Bitcoin bull, and essentially the market just goes straight up from that point. So it's just like a ton of risk coming into the market, essentially a ton of money, and everyone is just going stupid to try and make these returns because they're hearing about it at work, their friends, all that sort of stuff. That's how these markets are working. Previous cycle, it was also in an uptrend here, just underneath the previous old all-time high of the GFC. Here's your Bitcoin bull. It's basically like a straight line, and there's not much time that the market actually stops. And I think the S&P is going to get to that point as well, and is going to go a little bit silly over the coming couple of years here. You can see we're sort of in that 25, 26 period. Now, I don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but you can see from the last couple of years that we've been following this on the channel and putting out content almost every single day there, that the market is working relatively well to our cycle. So just to finish off on this, as a reminder, we're looking for a new all-time high for the S&P and then a second one as well. Does it have to be exactly like that? No, but the main thing I think will happen is S&P will go to a new all-time high. I've been talking about this for months upon months upon months. And then we may get a pullback because people can't believe it. And then we start to push into new all-time highs again. And then most people can start to believe it by that point. The NASDAQ just hit a new all-time high price. Can you believe that? I put that tweet prediction out here. So that's what it looks like on a chart. That's this particular tweet here. And I said these markets are bottoming at this stage. If you remember at that time, the majority of people were telling us the opposite. They were telling us that it had to crash. And this is something that I guess I've just come up with probably today as I was doing the analysis. And I'll share with you that in just a moment. For the Dow Jones futures contract, we looked at this a few days ago, hit a new all-time high price, basically on Monday, I think it was. And now it is trading in new all-time high prices. It's a 1.77% above the previous old all-time high. Now, these are all the futures markets, and eventually these markets here, the SPX, NDX, and the DJI will catch up. You can see the SPX, 2.37%. The NDX, which is the NASDAQ index, is now only 1.2% away from its all-time high, so getting so close. And the Dow Jones, well, it hit a new all-time high price. That's what we were looking at yesterday and just absolutely exploded. So that says negative, but it's actually a positive now. I have to flip this around. So roughly 0.5% above its old all-time high price. More markets hitting new all-time high prices. The Home Builders ETF. This one is going to be extremely important to us. Here is our macro chart. I say we're about here in our overall cycle. That's about 2023 moving into 2024. And then we go stupid in probably 2025, 2026. This is going to be important to note because I've got a couple of comments to get through here, which I think will fool most. Because at the end of the day, how the markets work is that they always fool us at the extremes. They fool the extreme bulls and the extreme bears. And I have to say that's probably one of my lessons that I had to learn along the way. And I even learn it time after time because I sound so bullish in these. I'm not always going to be so bullish in the markets. It's just the chart is telling us the market is up. It's up. But you've got bulls that are telling us this market is going to go to extreme levels and then collapse in 2024. Cycle history does not show, at least on the probability side, that 2024 will be a absolute collapse year. And what I mean by that, and we need some specific points, what the blow-off top people are talking about, from what I can tell, are that we'll get some extreme prices. This could be on whatever chart. Let's look at the Dow Jones. And then it has to collapse and take out these lows. I don't think 2024 will take out March or probably not even October of 2023. And this cycle low, I think, is pretty much a safe point. I don't really want to say it like that, but I don't think these prices, let's say it like that, these prices are going to get taken out through 2024. 2024 can have some corrections in it. I dare say that will happen because this market has been on a mega run, but I don't think it's going to be the blow off. All right, so let's finish up here with what's happening in the real estate market. The investors are telling us, the people who are buying are telling us that they are still forecasting profits for home builders in the US, home builder ETF overall. Don't worry about what some of the data points say about, this particular city is going down in price and it's down 20%. That's not the point. The point of the macro cycle is to see how the macro picture is playing out. And they are showing that in the future, they expect the home builders to show profits. It's never at the exact time. They're always forecasting things in advance to obviously try and get on before the masses catch on. Now, the home builders are up 4.7% from their previous all-time high price. Eventually, this will turn. I expect it to probably turn in the next few years, right? We'll continue to follow up with that because we are here. We're expecting this, and most are expecting this and then a collapse, or the others are just expecting this. They're expecting a collapse almost every single day of the year. So this question comes, let's clear up this one first. This is the first one here where they see a lot of people calling for a blow off top mid-2024. 2024 could potentially just continue to rise for the first half. We get a bit of a pullback somewhere in Q2 into Q3, early Q3, because the market has been running. Look, it's been running a lot and it will need another pullback just to reset. And so that could be the premise for the blow off top people to say that here it is, here is the collapse. And that could catch a lot of people out, which is probably why I called the video something around everyone is going to get fooled. This is my opinion. I'm sharing that with you. I hope you appreciate it. Like and subscribe and share and all that. And if you disagree, let me know in the comments section. this is how the markets work. We don't all agree on everything, which is why I guess 90% of people get it wrong. They're sort of going for the bearish thing over and over again. So thank you for bringing this up. They're calling for blow off tops in that area, mid-2024, big boom, and then a big collapse. I don't think this is going to happen just based on what I've seen in previous cycles for these particular years, whether they are election years, whether they are years ending in 4, which again, students would really love, and they understand that. And as we head into the end of the 20-year cycle, the 18 to 20-year cycle, it doesn't seem to be the case. So that's a look at the blow off top, why I don't think that is going to happen in 2024. Of course, let's see what happens in 2024. I'm just sharing with you what I think. We do have to stay a little bit level-headed here. We're seeing, at least in the short and medium term, which is why I think that first half of 2024 might fool most again, because they're expecting a massive move and then a collapse. I don't know if that's going to happen. The optimism and pessimism spread is at some extremes here. You can see that it's hit the extreme level and it was at the baseline extreme level and then shot up again. So this doesn't mean that the market is going to collapse because we're at extreme optimism. The market has gone on significant runs after hitting the extreme optimism, but there is also the point to pay attention to that maybe the markets do need some cooling off. And typically what we've seen from the cycles is maybe around late December, maybe January, after that sort of Santa Claus rally, we do get a bit of a turning point in the market. So pay attention to that. And I think that might slow down this old blow off top thing, might fool that, and then the market has some time to reset to then continue up. Remember, we're looking at the macro cycle here, and then we can get into the smaller, shorter term picture later on with our cryptos and all that sort of stuff to be able to make those gains along the way. Now, this could be the slightly triggering point. Mike might be a fantastic guy. I don't know him personally at all. We spoke earlier in 2023, must have been May or June. Mike is always in the bearish camp for whatever reason. He's got the data there, Bloomberg intelligence. I don't know why. Always in the bearish camp. And on that podcast on Twitter, I said the markets will not hit 350, that's for the S&P, before they go to a new all-time high. Now, we're 0.5% away or 1% away. Maybe it doesn't get there and it goes to a new all-time low. And Mike can claim that victory. This might be a little bit immature of myself. I'll let you be the judge of that. But at the end of the day, I don't see this market going to collapse in the face of all of the more bearish news that continues to come out. So this is the piece that I tried to put together myself in my head. Why is it always so bearish? Well, one, I guess we all get it. Bearish news always sells. But how do they continue to keep looking or keep thinking the market is bearish? And I think it's because they just keep going to any of the markets that are bearish at the time. There's always something that is going down. You can see it's always a shift between one commodity to the next commodity, to maybe the US dollar, to maybe it's looking at the stock markets. This was a big one that I'm trying to put together in my own head. I think they just keep looking at all of the markets that have been going down, and then eventually when they start going back up, they flip and they go and look at something else that is going down. It's a global recessionary trajectory, just always something going down. If we look at crude oil, sure, it's been going down for the next 3 months or last 3 months. I doubt they were talking about it here when the market was going up. And you can apply this same theory to any other market, to any analyst. This is something that I've learned and I'm coming together with it. You take it or leave it, entirely up to you. For me, that's my wisdom that I think is going to play out forever. That's the way I understand analysts to be. So when this market eventually turns around, I think oil will eventually turn around because the US dollar is falling again. Well, then they'll probably get off that bandwagon and talk about something else that may be heading down. But I'm calling this the everything bull market over the next few years. And I think there's going to be a fair bit of bullishness across everything except the US dollar. So here's a forecast. I think those analysts will probably start to look towards the US dollar and tell us that the US dollar is falling, which is a bad thing for everything else. Before, they were telling us the US dollar falling was a good thing for everything else, but I think they might have to flip and then start talking about why the US dollar is falling. And we've talked about the US dollar falling over the next couple of years based on our 20-year cycles in a macro sense, because this is pretty much what happens in the second half of the real estate cycle, which is where we are into this peak here. And this is where the US dollar will start to climb again when everything looks like it'll come down. It doesn't come down all at the same time. We know from commodities, they typically can continue up in that period for a little longer while the market is falling, like we saw with gold, like we saw with oil here going into 2008 when the market started to fall. So anyway, looking at this, the US dollar I think is going to continue coming down. I think it'll take out 100. I think it'll end up taking out 99. And then eventually it'll find some sort of bottom and then come back the other way. But that is a look over the next 5 to 10 years. Here is another piece of the evidence that we were looking at to help us identify the markets going up. This was back in June 2023. And I looked at the VIX, and my analysis showed that when it gets into this zone, which I called the bull market territory, you can see when it gets in there after hitting a pretty big extreme, that it stays in this zone for a relatively lengthy period of time. Look at the years down here. This is on a monthly or quarterly chart. And when it gets into this zone, sure, it can have some spikes out, but the S&P 500 was climbing through this period. This was basically one of the lows there through the collapse of the GFC. Then you can see the highs getting lower and the market just relatively settling down into a low volatility period while the S&P basically was climbing from that point. What had been said previously, and people were bringing this up, was that the VIX was getting similar to what it did right back here. And they said it was going to crash, or at least look towards crashing. And I just suggested, did you read the tweet? And I went through and explained this in great detail in a bit of an education piece. So I'm not going to bang on about this too much more. But for you guys who are following along with the macro cycle, as the VIX has been heading into this, remember this was written 6 months ago now, we have seen an increase in the price of the S&P and those indices because we are in a bull market zone here of lower volatility on the VIX. And that's how I read the VIX. And so far it has worked out relatively well because we have studied the entire history, not just looking back to a short period of time. And so that's the second massive piece of wisdom that at least I've found over the course of my history, is that most don't look back far enough. They think a few months, maybe a few years is enough. But for me, I want to go back and look at as much history as the data is going to provide and then analyze it from that point, because we have multiple different stages of a cycle which marry up with the 20-year cycle. So if you can get 20 years of data across anything, I think you're going to do relatively well. You've got almost an entire cycle to look at. Then you want to go back and do multiple cycles on top of that, so multiple 20-year cycles as well. Once we get that on the VIX, then we have more to work with, but so far this has been working out. When it settles into this zone around 11 to 17, typically go on a bull market run from that point. So if you want to keep these in your own portfolio so that you know what's going on, you can clear out the noise of the doomers and those macro bull market blow off top folks, keep this one here on your Twitter or X and bookmark it, stay on the right side of the macro market and everything becomes so much easier. Bitcoin, we are here now. Let's have a look at this because Bitcoin has just moved up in the last 24 hours. We had a little bit of a bottoming here and it's pushed up higher. Remember, the main thing we're looking at here for the short term, so everything we looked at previously there was basically across the macro, and we're seeing that play out day after day to those new all-time highs. In the case of Bitcoin, I suspect that we are sort of topping for, at this period here, and it might last a month or two, like we looked at with the 30, 60, 90-day calls, which I think was new to some of you guys as well. So that was a good thing there. Glad you found a lot of value from that, looking at turning points around that sort of month, 2 month, 3 month periods. So we looked at some of the worst case scenario downsides in a bull market. We've got our 50% level here at $35,000. And essentially all that's happened over the last 24 hours is Bitcoin has found its way back above the 50%. The weekly is the big one that we were looking at here, and we want to see how Bitcoin reacts to that 50% level, the macro 50% level from the all-time high to the cycle low. Is it going to close above it or below it? We have 4 days left to go to see how that plays out. So we'll continue to follow up here on the channel, hit the like and subscribe. With everything that's going on in the macro space, I'm still of the belief Bitcoin is going up longer term. I do think it needs to digest this pretty significant move. It's been fantastic. We were looking at lows here in the market, and obviously the market's taken off from that point. So I think we need some time to digest that again. That is the macro picture here on the monthly chart. We haven't hit 48 yet. That's going to be your next significant price resistance level. But for now, we're basically toying around with the 50% level. Surprise, surprise. We're sitting on this for the last several days. So once it can figure out what it wants to do here, we're going to get the next piece of the puzzle, the next picture into what the market wants to do. In the short term, you can see it's lower highs, lower lows. So for the daily, I mean, we just got to look at it in terms of the side of the bears for the daily piece here. Now, for the altcoins, this is going to explode. I think we are still too early. I've pointed out that I think we're in this particular type of range here. And every time we do go on this first little move out, which confirms we will see a macro bull market in altcoins, we do get a pullback. This is something that happens every single cycle. Let me know in the comment section if you think this is the time now for the macro bull market, where you can see here it just goes on these huge rallies and never comes back. Personally, I think we're in this period here. So this is the confirmation. This is the pullback into that higher low, and then we get the move on. So in terms of time, that brings us out to sometime late 2024, which also lines up with the S&P basically coming to the end of this little Bitcoin accumulation, which might be in that second time that the S&P breaks to that new fresh high. Remember the other massive piece of wisdom, and I'll throw that in as number 3 here. When we were looking at Bitcoin breaking into new all-time high prices, basically almost all of the altcoins had that one last down move against their BTC value as Bitcoin went into new all-time highs, and then they went ballistic. So I think we're into this stage where we're trying to find a top, then we'll get a correction. You can see the Bitcoin ran into a new all-time high here in November 2020. The following month, almost all the altcoins had a pullback. ETH, Solana, almost everything had a pullback in that month. And then the following month, everything exploded. So we're not trying to catch the exact low, and we don't need to sell the exact top. Essentially, it seems like it's a relatively safe, I hate using that word, but it seems like it has a better reward risk time to be getting into the market at that stage. And so far, things are on track, and it seems like that timing is coming out in the second half of 2024. So hopefully I've been able to present to you a lot of that info. Everything has been playing out over the last year and a half that we've been talking about here. And I know there's a lot of new people that are starting to watch now, so I thought I would just refresh it and show us what we have been covering for over a year now, so that hopefully you can get up to speed and not miss out on some of the gains that are ahead, but at the same time not get too caught up in the day-to-day stuff of the blow-off tops and the forever recessionary doom-dayer fear porn type of content out there. So if you've seen enough evidence in the market to now show you that the 20-year cycle seems to be playing out almost to a T, get yourself prepared. I think we're going into a mania stage followed by a mega collapse, a collapse bigger than what we saw in 2020, a collapse bigger than we saw in 2022, and maybe something like 2028. But I think there's a little bit more of a boom to go than many realize, because the market does a fantastic job at destroying the extreme bulls that are talking about extreme moves to the upside, and extreme bears who are talking about recessions no matter what time of day it is. Like and subscribe to Home of Macro Cycle Analysis. Links in the description to join us at the Investor Accelerator. And for the Aussies, get your $40 of free BTC or buy Bit and Bit, get down here. Check that stuff out. I'll see you guys at the next video. Have a good one. And so glad to see those new all-time highs coming in for the S&P. Take care and peace out.